In a vast wasteland of entertainment where radio has become obsolete, stands an embittered man teetering at the edge of sanity. With help from radio friends, he's about to embark on a global mission that would change the course of history as we know it. Broadcasting live from the secret studios on the banks of the Brandywine River in Delaware is Mitchell K.C. Hill. And up to the Great White North in Vancouver is Alexander Knight.
Hey, how y'all doing? Nice to have you here for The Last Angry DJ. This is episode number 60. So happy Easter Monday. It's one of those days when things roll out on Monday. I hope everybody can hear me correctly. We're doing a last minute checking and adjusting. And this is The Last Angry DJ. I'm the old guy from the 70s. And before I get started, we have a new sponsor, and it's my friends at Arby's. They have the meats. They also have a really cool app that you can use to get specials, notifications for discounts and BOGOs and things like that. It's a great place to go to, Arby's. I'm a fan of the beef with the cheddar all sprinkled on it. So that and curly fries, I'm a happy guy. So this is the program. The guy that takes care of the more recent stuff is my good friend Alexander. Alexander, how are you, sir?
Oh, good morning, Mitch. Good morning. Is it morning? Is it afternoon? We're all in different. We're in different time zones. I have no idea what's going on.
Thanks. Not that far up.
It's good to be here for episode 60 of The Last Angry DJ, the show that intersects the world of old media, everything from terrestrial radio to YouTube and podcasts and all that sort of stuff. So we talk to luminaries in both of those worlds, and we've got some great guests lined up for the next couple of weeks. This week it is just the three of us. Speaking of our third person, our co-host, Mark Giuliani has a lot of experience in the radio industry. How you doing, Mark?
Mute.
You're muted, Mark.
Mute.
Zoom muted.
Mute.
There
Good afternoon, everyone, on this special edition, on Monday edition. And here we go, Mitch.
Oh, okay. Just kick it right back to me. All right. That's all right. We're going to have some fun today. It's we're the collective that we call the Broadcast Boffins when we do a special edition of the program without a guest. And speaking of guests, I don't know if you've heard the rumor, but it is true. We have a very special guest coming to our program next Sunday, which is actually this Sunday. And it is the great and the expert on all things tech and video and audio, Mr. Alex Lindsay, will be here with us next Sunday. So we invite you to ask your questions early so that we can get them all in. I know there'll be plenty of questions to be asked, and it'll be great to see Alex here on the program. Of course, you can see him every day on officehours.global, but he has not been on this program before. So we're going to talk a little bit about Alex's early career in radio prior to his work at ILM. And by the way, speaking of ILM, if you watched the great show on Disney called Industrial Magic, I think it's Industrial Light Magic, whatever that documentary show that they have. Check it out. You get a couple cameos of Alex in there a couple of times, popping in out of nowhere. So it's kind of neat. So that is the nature of this show. And since this is a specialty day, because we didn't do Sunday because all our families wanted to celebrate Easter, we decided to move it to Easter Monday because I guess it's 2 Easters now. Mark, I go to you for all the religious content. Is it like do you celebrate Sunday and Monday, or is it how does that work? I'm a little confused.
Well, there's Holy Week the week before, and then you have Good Friday.
Yeah,
and Good Friday, then you have Easter Sunday, and then Easter Monday is also a holy day.
So in addition to being holy, is it a recognized holiday for everybody, or just Catholics?
You know, I don't know the answer to that. I would imagine that it's to Christians in general, but
all Christians.
It's not a federal holiday.
Yeah, that's what I meant. You know, so we get mail delivery today. And
right.
The Easter Bunny doesn't have a union problem. We're going to get the eggs.
I don't know about that. It depends on what state they're in. If they're in a right-to-work state, then the Easter Bunny.
Yeah, this is a right-to-work state that I'm in anyhow. So we got it covered. So in Canada, do you have any Pardon me, I'm dying. Alex, do we have an Easter bunny up in Canada way, or do you have some other, like an Easter moose or something like that?
No, we don't. But apparently we've got some, because we're running enough. Just so everyone knows, we have a new audio pipeline. So apparently my voice is being doubled in program. So I'm going to have to get back to you guys because I'm going to have to fix this right now on the show.
All right, well, you have fun with that, and Mark and I will take over the program. Welcome to the new edition of Office Hour. No, I'm sorry, of The Last Angry DJ, featuring Mark Giuliani and Mitch Hill, Monday edition on this Easter non-federal holiday. It's good. And, you know, the shame of that whole thing is the Pope having to pass away on Easter Sunday. That was weird. There's some weird thing going on there to have him go the same day that Christ came back to redeem our souls, as it were. So not to get into great religious discussions. I'm not a theologist. I don't follow all that stuff so well. But whoever is harmed or upset or in grieving, I wish you the very best of luck. All right, cool stuff going on in the world of news and broadcasting. Got a couple of things to talk about. Maybe the first thing that we'll get out of the way is one that's a subject that's near and dear to Mark's heart. So I'm going to toss it right to you, Mark. Tell us about the Nielsen rating that came out. I think I touched on it the other day when we were talking about in-car listening. What's the quick take on that?
So it's really interesting. Nielsen's study came out and shows that radio offers the highest return on investment in media mix. And they did a story, Odyssey SVP of Research and Insights, Ray Borelli, talks about a study that was put on that showed that when a business dropped radio advertising, the foot traffic went down by 11% within 2 weeks. And then it goes on and talks about a little bit more, but to kind of give you a summary, that traffic came back when they went back to radio. So it's not as if, business is just down. The business did come back once they continued with their radio advertising. So it's really interesting to see the power of radio over the competition, which is digital and TV.
Yeah, radio has its problems, but not that big a problem. And right. As Mark Twain would say, the reports of its death are greatly exaggerated because it's got wheels. It's not going anywhere. It's a major player in the world of media attraction, and that's the thing. The real challenge in the world that we live in today is that if I compare it to the way it was when I was a much younger man, like say in the 70s, there was a limited number of things that challenged you for your attention. TV, 4 channels, maybe 3 channels. Radio, there might have been 3 or 4 radio stations in your market, and that was it. There was no internet. There was no texting. There were no iPhones. You might get a phone call and talk to somebody, but it's on the phone on the wall with the touch buttons or the rotary dial.
The rotary dial.
Yeah, remember the old rotary dial?
Oh, yeah.
I used to be in a hurry, and I'd push the dial faster going the opposite direction, which really didn't work well. So if you had to dial a 9, I'd dial the 9 like, and it would go around the dial. And sometimes if I was in a hurry, I'd just push it to make it go faster.
But phone numbers weren't that long back then. You had like OL492 or something like that. You had really short phone numbers.
If you go way before my time, yes, it was like 2 or 3 numbers. But they used to use these little acronyms like I used to live in Erie, Pennsylvania, and our prefix was Glenwood, and that was GW. So, right. Yeah, there were 2 numbers instead of 764-5300. It was like 76-5300, and that would be the number that would get you. Yeah, so you're right. Yeah. So
and do you know why an adding machine's display of numbers and a telephone's display of numbers are different?
You mean on the touchpad?
On touchpads, yeah.
Because the 0 is always a wild card in there, right?
Now, the story I heard was that when they first introduced it, touch tone, the accountants were dialing faster than the system could register, so they flipped the number pad so the accountants would have to look. But who knows if that's actually true.
Do you know why on a typewriter or even on a keyboard today, the QWERTY typewriter or keypad, why it's a QWERTY instead of a Dvorak layout, which is
so they did a number of studies, time motion studies, to find the fastest the easiest way to type quickly. And then after some studies, they had to find a way that was easy to type but didn't jam the keys.
Because the strikers were coming up from not Steve Stryker, but the strikers were coming up from the platen on the typewriter. And if they were too close, they would get stuck.
QWERTY wasn't the first choice for fast typing, but it was the easiest or the fastest way to type without jamming the keys.
Got it. So who do you think figured all that out? OSHA or somebody else, or
Underwood.
International Society of Typewriters?
Frank Underwood from the Underwood Typewriter
Underwood. There was such a guy? Do you think that Mr. Underwood and Otis from the Elevator, family, they would all get together and have like Christmas dinner together? Say, how you doing with elevators? Well, we figured out a way to keep it from
Carnegie Library and study.
Yeah, there is such a thing, right?
Right.
And remember, did you ever read the book? What was it? It Came from Jekyll Island.
No,
That's when the Carnegies and the Mellons and the Rockefellers got together and decided that there was going to be a Federal Reserve. And they made it sound as if it's a government institution. Hey, folks, the Federal Reserve is not a government institution. It's an independent corporation or company that handles the money supply here in the United States. And it was handled by the Rockefellers, the Mellons, and the Carnegies. It Came from Jekyll Island is the name of the book. I was just informed. So that's a book to read if you want to get a little interesting reading. So I got sidetracked, but hey, it's Sidetrack Monday here at the Last Angry TJ. Where were we? I got lost. We were talking about the
phone systems.
The phone system. But before that, we were talking about something else. The way things have changed in the radio business. Well,
No. We were talking about the study of the best return on investment for advertising being radio.
Right. Okay, here's the deal. When we used to talk to advertisers, this is back in the old days when we were like selling, and I'd sit in on a lot of sales meetings because as the radio personality, I always felt that you have to learn as much as you can about everything going on around you. So I learned technical, I learned sales, all of those things. Is that when you'd go in and you'd have a client that was spending gobs of money on let's say it's a car dealership, and they're spending money with you every single week, bada boom, bada boom, bada boom, and they're going along, and all of a sudden they say, maybe I should just stop for a little while and see where we are with this. And I know what was going through their head. They would think that we'll call it the flywheel effect, that they ran so much advertising that the mentions and the top of the mind awareness would continue to travel along the path of success even after they stopped advertising, because people would remember them. And then they could sit back for maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks, save all that money, and they come back on and pick up where they left off. That flywheel effect is false. It doesn't work that way. In other words, if you stop advertising, you have to start back up almost sometimes from scratch. So it's best to stay in the game at least a little bit, but not completely go out and then figure that you can pick up right where you left off. It's not going to work that way. So I'm sure that deals with the psychological aspects of top of the mind awareness of advertising, its effectiveness, whether it's in radio or print or anything else like that. And to make that a little clearer, and Mark, you can jump in here because you're dealing with this all the time. It's like billboards, which were a lot bigger than they are now. Billboards are, falling off the charts a little bit too. But you don't really notice what's on the billboard unless it's something you're interested in. In other words, let's say there's a section of the interstate you travel and there's car dealership spots up there all the time on the billboard. You may just ignore them. But when you're in the market to buy a Hyundai or a Chevy or a Ford or whatever it might be, you become hyper aware of those billboards. And now they mean a lot more to you than they did before when you weren't in the market to purchase a car. That's kind of how it is with radio and television and, a media like that, is if you're in the market for something, then you need to be more hyper aware of what's up there on that billboard, because now you're interested in the deals that are going. Factory rebates were a big thing. Do they do rebates anymore? That was like the thing back when I used to buy cars. You buy a car and they hand you cash.
Certain months you get different interest rates and things like that. But the challenge with billboards is, in reality, billboards on highways give you about 7 seconds
And you're being
attention.
generous.
Yeah.
You're being generous.
And most clients want to put too much information into their use of advertising. In other words, if I'm a small business owner, I want to get as much out of this money that I'm spending. So I try to get it to do too many things at once, and then it fails altogether. And you really, I mean, the power of advertising is getting into somebody's mind, so you're at the top of their mind when they go to make that purchase.
That's right. Top of the mind awareness is something that's expensive to buy. By the way, I used to do billboard advertising for my clients. Here's an example of one that I did for a for a legal firm. And if you look at the top, that ran for, I don't know, for a couple of months. And it was just a fun little summer is better in Delaware, two women enjoying themselves. And then a week later, I put what appeared to be an accident. The billboard had malfunctioned, and it was for a couple of lawyers. It was a really funny billboard. But the important thing about this is that you put something up there that's going to grab their attention, that's going to be interesting. So if you think about those two billboards separated by about 2 or 3 weeks, you're used to seeing the one on the top, and then all of a sudden the one on the bottom, and then people get the gag, and they're like, "Oh, look at that! That something happened at a billboard." And it's like, "Oh, man, is that funny or what?" So that was a gag bit that I did in order to whoops, hit the wrong button. There we go. Gag bit that I did with a billboard. But like Alex says, I used to go in a client and they'd come in and they'd say, "Well, I want more. I want to put our mission statement on that billboard." I said, "Here's how long you have to read a board when you're driving by."
Right.
That's it. So I used to take like one of those little miniature billboards and I'd flash it in front of them and say, were you able to read that? And in a lot of ways, radio, it's reach and frequency in broadcast. And what that means is that you have to run a number of mentions per hour in order to get 90% or 80% of the audience involved. So you can't just run one ad because that radio station doesn't cover everybody. As big as your station, WGMD, sorry. I was going to say MGK. Your radio station, which is owned now by Beasley, anyhow, you have to work at it. You have to be a regular and consistent advertiser getting your name out there to get that top of the mind awareness. And why don't you explain, Mark, what that is?
There's a number of books. There's a number of books that have gone into the study of how to get the top of mind, how to write an ad to grab people's attention and utilize the most of that 30-second or 60-second spot. Chuck Mefford is somebody who's been in the radio industry for years and has written a number of books on this. And so has Roy Williams. Roy Williams has a number of books that talk about how to get to the top of mind through advertising. And, if I were to ask you right now to list me all the toothpaste in the grocery aisle of a grocery store, you'd probably be able to name 4 or 5, but there might be 30. So it takes a lot of practice and repetition and to get in front of the audience and become that top of ladder. And the studies I've read are usually that you need to run a frequency of 3, and that's calculated through a number of methods that take into account what your ratings are and what type of format you have and such. And so for News Talk, it's about 25 messages per week that have to be played in order for the average listener to hear those 3 times. And if they can hear that message 3 times, it's something that gets implanted into their mindset so they recall it when they go to buy that good or service.
Yeah, and when they're in the market to buy a car, they're going to be more aware of Joe's Chevrolet.
Right.
Because, I want to get a Chevrolet. And all of a sudden they hear Joe's Chevrolet and they become aware of what's going on the radio. So you got to do more than one ad. You got to run a series of ads. So
you have to do a series of ads, and you have to differentiate your product or service from everyone else's in that market. If you're an HVAC company, why are you better? What is in it for the listener to go to your company versus someone else's? So
yeah, and when I see ads that have slogans like "Try us because we're better than everybody else," that's not a benefit. You have to sell the benefit to the user. So when the user looks at it and said, "We'll beat anybody else's price by at least 10%," that's a benefit.
When you're doing a good, what's in it for me?
Yeah, what's in it for? Well, just sell a benefit for the client.
Right.
It's sometimes you have to be like a tough uncle dealing with your clients, because you got to give them advice that's going to work for them as opposed to advice that doesn't work for them. Because ultimately they're going to come back and say, well, I ran that ad campaign and I didn't get any response. It's your fault, Mark.
Right.
You have to be prepared to say, well, if you had taken my advice, I could show you that this is the way to get the most. I always commend a client when I tell them about advertising on the radio. I know we're getting a little off subject, but this is a great story to tell. And I always tell them, I said, this is what I do. I say, look, I'm going to come in and tell you that this amount of money that you're spending putting it on the table, and I'd put like a couple of fake bundles of money. I said, I'm going to make this pile of money look like this pile of money. And they always like that, because it means that you're not looking to make them spend this pile of money to get something done. You're just spending this little pile of money, make it sound like you're spending this kind of money. So there's a lot of good advice that you can get from your radio or TV or any other digital media. Things that you do, repetition and reach and frequency. Those are the big things. Alex, when you're listening to the radio, what ad do you hate hearing? And do you hear it all the time? Is it repetitive? Does it drive you up the wall? Do you put up with it?
I do listen to the radio. I've said this before, but I do listen to the radio on my my morning commute, and I don't hear. I mean, I hear ads, but honestly, I couldn't tell you which specific one. If there is one that's repeating often that annoys me, I do hear. Now, I do hear annoying ads. I mean, certainly car dealerships. They still. I don't know if you guys hear this, but I still hear really cheesy commercials.
Do they still do the trunk monkey?
It's always someone yelling into a microphone. It's like, "Hey, this is Joe Schmo from blah blah blah." And so it's like, why are you doing this?
If you didn't buy my car, you got robbed.
Why do we still have this? Now, I guess I paid. Job done. I paid attention. It got me awake in my car, but it's just annoying.
Yeah, I mean the screaming ads. The reason they do it is because sometimes it works. Because again, remember how you listen to the radio. You're doing something while you may be driving, you might be having a conversation with somebody, and all of a sudden, out of the corner of your ear, this guy is saying, "Come to Joe Chevrolet, we got the trunk monkey," and or whatever else that he's doing, and it's like, yeah, I caught it, but I didn't like it. But okay,
you have to be careful because it can drive people to to your competition. They'll just turn it off.
Yeah, and the other trend in broadcast is no more 60-second spots. I don't hear them. I don't think it's even on your radio, your rate card, Mark. Do you have 60s on there, or is it all 30s and 15s?
It's very rare that we'll run 60s anymore because think about people's attention spans these days. We're more inclined to run 30s or intros to news and weather and traffic, things of that nature.
Yeah, I used to, when I had a client come to me and I'd write a 60-second spot for them, and they'd say, "You can write me a 30 and produce it, and that'll only cost half the price of the 60." And I said, wait just a minute here. First of all, it's a challenge to take that garbage bag and fill it with as much crap that you have that you want in your spot, much less try to hold people's attention in a 30-second spot. It's a little easier to do it in a 60. So right there, you got me on the writing time. And then production-wise, you're stuffing all of this material into this, into a 3-pound bag. There's some scatological remark about that.
Putting 5 pounds into a 3-pound.
Yeah, that's it. And it's a challenge to be able to do that. So 30s are tough.
30s are tough, but I think the development of the internet as a marketing tool changed a lot of that 60 to 30 because yes, you're right. They used to be a lot more 60-second commercials. But I think now with the capability of, instead of giving out a phone number that nobody's going to write down, if you have a catchy domain name, people are going to remember that and they'll go find out more about the products or service you sell by going to the website.
Yeah, I was just told don't put www in front of the, like I have a company called secretagencyfilms.com. Check it out. Don't put it in www because first of all, it's hard to say. www.secretagencyfilms.com. Just put secretagencyfilms.com. And people automatically assume, even now if you type into any kind of a browser, it'll assume that it's HTTPS:// www. Alex, is that true? Just about everywhere is you can just type the name with the extension.com on it, and it's going to get where it needs to go?
Yep, pretty much. I mean, it hasn't been. I'm surprised. It's not that often that this happens, but I still see once in a while when people in lower thirds, for example, they'll still put http:// or they'll put in www. You don't even need the www. They got rid of that years ago. So it's kind of weird to see people still think that you need to have that stuff in front of it.
Is that for because the updates on the DNS that it resolves all of those names?
I honestly I don't remember the reason for it. It's all done on the back end. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but you don't need it.
Wait a minute, give that to me again. The back end. I like that. Right. Just throw it in there. All right. So advertising, Mark's point is that the reports of radio's death greatly exaggerated. Advertising has changed. I think you have to be more strategic in your thinking if you're going to run advertising. You don't need a 60. You can do it in 30 and try to do it in a 15. And if you go back to something that Alex said a while back, that he likes the idea of the if it's a morning guy and he's got a conversation going on an all talk radio, or maybe it's just a morning coffee kind of show, work that ad in there somehow in such a way that you don't know that a commercial is coming or something is going to happen, so that like I'm kind of really hungry right now. What I really like is when I go in to an Arby's. Oops, I did it wrong. Sorry. When I go into an Arby's and I want to get a sandwich, I use that app now because I can order in advance, and I don't have to worry about standing in line or dealing with that. So it's kind of easy. Don't forget, Arby's, we have the meats. It's that simple. So if you work it in, it's a little bit better. Do you like a Jamoke shake? You can. There's things you can talk about that will trigger people's hunger pains. What's that, Alex?
Live reads.
Oh, Mark. Okay. Yeah. Honest to God, when I started in radio, I hated live reads because I would get nervous halfway through it. Like when you have this persona and character, and then you had a 60-second spot where you couldn't drop character. You had to read this thing for what it was, and you only had one shot at it. You couldn't if you screwed it up. I guess you could start over again, but that really called attention to it. I used to feel a lot of pressure, and I used to get like anxiety built up about doing live reads. Nowadays, I don't give a damn. I guess that's the attitude you have to have. So what? Let's keep it real. I screwed up the name of the company or did something weird.
Yeah. It's different because you're usually recording them in a studio and you can do multiple takes, and then all of a sudden now, you got to go once. So
you're under pressure, man. You're under pressure.
Yeah.
And even in the studio, a lot of times they would invite the client in and they'd put you in this fishbowl studio with a microphone, and then the engineers and the decision makers be sitting in the other room, the agency, the client, and they'd all be staring at you, watching your every tiny little pronunciation. And I know I could do multiple takes, but there's a lot of pressure when you're doing stuff like that. Nowadays, nobody's around anymore. Nobody would show up at my studio. They used to supervise me, but not so much. Anyhow, did you ever get nervous, Mark, did you ever come on the air as an owner and do a editorial?
They don't let me anywhere near a microphone.
Why not? What's their
they're trying to protect the integrity and reputation of the station.
But see, your being on this show is qualifying you as a legitimate personality that is comfortable with himself, because you're very comfortable with yourself. You sound okay. I think that you're actually gaining momentum and confidence so you can do this better. This is what I do when I teach people presentation and wordsmithing and reading. I used to do it on office hours. I had like a reader workshop is what it was called. And I'd come on and explain, here's your mindset and here's what you need to do. I remember when little Alex Knight came into After Hours, and he was like, he was kind of trolling us, seeing whether or not he wanted to go on office hours. And he was like, well, I'm not sure what I want to do. And I was like, Alex, you got to come on. Because back then you had the Skeezix hair thing. What was that called? The little hair that popped up off the top of your forehead. And you have some piercings going on.
It's like a tuft. It was just like a little piece of.
You looked a little unusual, but I thought it was cool.
I didn't understand. I was surprised that anybody would want me there. I didn't understand why you wanted me, because you didn't. I'm like, who am I?
Because all the other people at the time that I was on, they were all older white guys. And it was nice to have some younger, at least people that looked younger with a different opinion that goes along with it on there too. And I see everybody smiling.
Right.
I don't mean to disregard. I'm not picking on office hours. I'm just saying I thought you were a good enough character and you could hold your own and you're good at it. And here we are. What is it? 2 years you've been on there? And I came in on Saturday. You were hosting office hours, and other times I've come in, you're reading, and you sound great. And I think I can attribute that to the repetition, the fact that you would do it over and over.
Yeah.
What are you smiling about, Mark?
Well, I was just thinking Alex was the good student and I was the bad student.
What do you mean by that, Mark?
I mean that you progressed further and you've done very well, whereas I haven't done so well because I can't even do a mic check without messing it up.
Oh, don't be silly.
I like it when you introduce Mark at the beginning of the show. And usually when you get introduced, you say, hey, how you doing? It's a beautiful day. Had a great time this weekend. And Mark will come on and say, hey, nice to see you. Okay, Mitch. And I'd be like, well.
In all honesty, I did it because I had, you know, sometimes in Zoom, if you put a picture in and it like does the infinite loop.
Yes.
I had that in my ear. The show kept starting and kept starting and kept starting.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, where's it coming from? And I couldn't hear
It's coming
you.
from your YouTube feed. That's where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And
no,
well,
I had like 4 or 5 YouTube feeds going.
Nice.
At least Mark didn't say just one word, because whenever somebody just responds with a single word, it's just like, okay, you could maybe give me a little more than that, but
yes.
And other people are very articulate on their answering, and they might go into a whole, again, I'll plug it again, Alex Lindsay is going to be our guest next week. I know he's going to be an excellent guest because he has so much information that he can impart and so many great stories. And a little known fact that Alex started out in radio in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So we're going to kind of get to the bottom of that. I think that's where we're going to start out with Alex and say, what were your experience in radio? And what did you learn in your early days of broadcasting that you've taken with you through your career to where you are now as a podcasting expert extraordinaire? He's on Mac Break Weekly. He does office hours at just about, he created it. And he's on every day. He's very well spoken, and he produces major league events out of 090 Media. So it's going to be interesting to have that conversation with him. He's going to be an easy guest because he's not going to leave you hanging with a 1 or 2 syllable answer, unless just because I said this, he's going to do it to me and throw it right back at me, and then I'm going to have to think on my feet. But hey, I've never been at a loss for words, as you guys would both attest to. You know, it's one of those things that you do. So other news, Mark, you were running down a list of things that are interesting.
So other news, some interesting stories. A U.S. judge ruled that Google a U.S. judge ruled that Google illegally has been monopolizing ad technologies with all of its its power. It's amazing, all these tools that Google has to monitor and work with ads and tools that they have. I think AdSense is one of them. But the judge has ruled for the second antitrust suit in a while that Google is monopolizing the industry. The other one was they lost a case for search. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens to Google over the next year with these cases and how they're going to appeal them and how those appeals are going to work out.
How's that any different than Amazon being tagged by the FTC for monopolizing purchase? I mean, Amazon single-handedly is putting companies out of business, the classic brick and mortar stores. And that affects everybody, including you, Mark, for local advertising. So Google is very successful at what they do. And I guess if I were to take the counterpoint to what you're saying about Google being sued, I would say that Google worked hard to get to where they are. Don't they deserve to be able to be successful? Or do you have to fail at some point along the line? I'm sure they failed and been successful and failed, and they've paid a big fee. And by the way, Google owns YouTube, full disclosure, which we're being broadcast on right now. So lots going on there. I'm going to watch that with great interest. When the government gets involved, making decisions like this generally is not a good outcome. I remember back in the old days, DuPont, which is a local company that's done very well for itself, got broken into 3 different corporations because the government decided, boy, you're too big. AT&T, same thing. So, when is this a good thing and when is it a bad thing?
So that's a really good question. But look at AT&T and all the Bell companies that existed after that Bell got broken up. And so you broke all of these up. Would we be where we are today if they hadn't been broken up? Would we have the internet be as powerful as it is today if you still had one phone company for the entire country?
Yeah, I would question whether or not AT&T single-handedly made the success or failure of the internet, but I'm sure they contributed to it. A lot of the technology that they invented as a single monolithic company had benefits that extended way into today. In whether or not the Bell system was broken into smaller Bell systems around the world or the country, I don't think that really slowed them down one way or the other. So I agree with you.
I think it sped it up. I think it sped up the development of everything that we have today because they could no longer, own the lines and prohibit everybody, all the smaller businesses that were doing some really interesting things with inventing things and doing the research and development, but weren't allowed to really get it out to the marketplace. The breaking up of it kind of sped up the proliferation of all these things that people were researching and developing.
I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, but I honestly think that AT&T, as a main company, invested a lot of serious money into things like satellite technology and alternate. It all comes down to distribution. And back in the day, the phone companies had the only pair of wires that came into your home. There wasn't multiple different companies until they got broken up. And maybe that helped the consumers for a while, but it did what it did. It's like the government sometimes gets involved and does a great thing. Most of the time, it makes a mess of things. And it's like, as long as they're, pardon me?
Laissez-faire. Keep the government out.
Quid pro quo, whatever you want.
No, it just laissez-faire means let competition determine who succeeds and who fails. Keep the government out of it.
All right. Well, I hear a supply side economist speaking to me, and I have a feeling I know how your voting card goes. But other than that, Mark, maybe so. You can't make statements nowadays about anything and have it cover all circumstances. But the point of it is I still can't believe that they haven't jumped on Amazon, because Amazon's rewriting the whole retail mechanism of how people continue to purchase things.
Right.
And you don't go to I'll give you another example. My father's drugstores, he had a drugstore chain, and the family was involved in it for years. Photographs used to be a big deal. They sold the film, I guess Kodak, Benefit, Fuji, whoever. And then we did the processing. And then we did the printing. And it was a sizable chunk of business that we did. That's all gone. You don't go to a drugstore now anymore to buy film or have your photos processed. It's all digital. It's in the internet. You might go to them to be able to have a print made, something you wouldn't have built into your own home. So the world is changing. It's changing with a lot of disruptive technology and things that are going on. And it's going to affect everybody, not just radio, but print and billboards and cars. And, like Elon Musk says that, in 10 years, nobody's going to own cars anymore. They're just going to lease them, or they're going to have them on a time-by basis, so that when you need a car, you just summon one and it comes and gets you, and you jump in and you may not even own the car, but you might have paid into it. So a lot of things in the future. Look at Mark is there with his mouth like wide open, staring at me like, are you nuts? I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, that's not going to happen. Too many cars are the expression of freedom out west, and people are not going to sit there to Uber.
So are guns, but let's not even go there.
Yeah, but here's my question, and I'm not a media lawyer, obviously, and my knowledge of U.S. law is pretty limited, but what would stop a company like Google, and also remember Alphabet is the other company that Google also owns. What would stop them if all these services were broken up and sold off? What would stop them from creating a new corporation and then that corporation buying the ad portion of it?
I think that's exactly what they want them to do. I think the judges basically said the way out of this is for you to split yourselves up, so that there'll be different companies doing different things. I'm not a lawyer, And I don't know if that means that the same shareholders couldn't still, I guess when they got split up, they'd own those shares.
Yeah, I don't think there's any restrictions there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm not certain as to how this would actually solve the problem. If they did do that,
right.
Like, well, how does that actually, like, explain it to me like I'm 10 years old. How does that actually solve the problem? You know, and
what it does is it opens up the opportunity in the marketplace for other people to come in and now compete without competing with a giant that basically has a search tool that also does the advertising, but yet in this judge's opinion, and I didn't read the whole opinion, so I don't know. I just read the summary of the story, but basically the judge was saying that because they're using their own ad tools, they're giving the advertisers the less ability to use other tools because of the way they've set up the entire system. So it's kind of...
I was going to say, here's another example of where I don't think it works. You hear a lot of talk about we need to bring back manufacturing jobs to the United States. We've got to build factories, get metal workers, automakers, whatever. And I'm saying, wait a minute, who's going to be in these jobs you're talking about that they're going to bring back? How many millennials do you know want to go into manufacturing and blue collar jobs? You know, welding steel and building ships. And people just don't want to do that anymore. Who's the brainiac that figures if you bring back these plants to the United States that automatically people that are, you know, well, I'm going to quit my middle management job where I'm being paid six figures to take on a blue collar job where I'm welding steel girders together. I just don't see it happening. I think that ship has sailed.
My argument to that would be that there are a lot of people, the cost of education, college, has gotten so expensive that a lot of people don't have the ability to get there. And even those that do end up having these loans that they're having to pay for years. Whereas the opportunity nowadays is coming back for you to do a trade or to work as a factory worker or a blue collar worker, make a decent living now, and not be hunkered down by almost a home mortgage of loans to have to pay back. So I think if these jobs come back, that there are going to be plenty of people trying to do them to make a living.
I hope that that's the case, but I don't think it's going to work quite that way that you're saying, because there's no interest. There's a sense of entitlement that I feel from many millennials. And what are the newest version? Millennials are now an old term. I got to jump to Alex for that. But here's the thing, is that I don't think those are the jobs that people are waiting in line to get. Everybody wants their piece of the rock. So you go to college, you pay all those outrageous college fees to go to college, and then you want a job, and you're definitely going to want a job right out of college for six figures, and you're waiting for your chance because, damn it, you worked hard to get it. Now where is it? And more and more people are being disappointed by that. I think that's kind of the world that we live in right now.
They're being disappointed because there are no six-figure jobs, very few right out of college, and they're doing the math on what they owe and in their loans and how much it costs to live, either rent or buy, and they're figuring out that these numbers aren't working the way they thought they would before they decided to do this. So I think you're going to see more and more choices of people not going to college because of the expense and to getting a job right out of high school. And those jobs are going to be jobs that haven't traditionally been there for people.
I don't 100% disagree with you, Mark. There's a guy named Mike Rowe. He has a thing called Micro Works, WERKS, and he's selling exactly what you're saying. He's saying, why spend all this money to get specialty jobs or an advanced art degree in not bioscience, but something philosophical, something that's a hard job to justify when you get out. Any one of those jobs. I don't mean to disparage anybody who's getting a lit, bachelor degree or whatever. But he's saying, go back to what you're saying, is that become you don't have to pay for college. You become an intern for a plumber or a steel worker or an automaker. And you take those jobs, and maybe the value of those jobs will go up, and you'd be more satisfied. From your lips to their ears, But I think there's going to be a big area of disappointment between graduating with all those encumbrances and finally realizing they made a bad decision.
Yeah, I do. I don't 100% disagree with you. I think there are going to be some challenges there. I think a bigger challenge than employment is that we spent the past 20 to 30 years exporting our pollution. The environmental groups have these, well, the lawmakers have passed laws that make pollution, that have cleaned up the environment, yes, but they've made having a factory here much more expensive than having a factory overseas. So now we have to find a way to be able to set up these factories, meet all the environmental restrictions that are there here now that weren't there 30 years ago, and still sell a product that's competitive with a product made somewhere else in the world. That's the challenge, is how do we bring our economic scales back to the world scales?
It's a legitimate point to make. And I know that we want it, and we want to have a cake and eat it too, because we want all those jobs to come back. But we also don't want pollution. We don't want to, for global warming. And they just announced that they're bringing coal back as a means to fuel our furnaces and for generating electricity. The reason that China does so well in so many of these areas. I know we're getting geopolitical now, and I'm sorry, Alex, you're gonna have to stop in and stop me. Tell me to shut up. But anyhow, they don't have the requirements for their environmental conditions. If they want to build a coal-fired factory to build iPhones, they do. They just do it, and they deal with the consequences.
They don't have the same restrictions we have here, and we just did a story on our station about coal coming back and how much cleaner the coal is today than the coal we grew up with, when you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face when you drove through Pittsburgh because of the air pollution. But they've cleaned up a lot of the pollution elements that come out of these factories today.
Sure. So, I mean, I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania. That's where I was born. Yeah. And there was always jokes about how dirty Lake Erie was. In fact, it was so bad sometimes that it would catch fire. I think they've said that about one of the rivers in Pittsburgh did that once. But now Lake Erie is a lot cleaner than it was way back because of the restrictions. But at the same time, they're talking about banning the EPA. So go figure. Alex, I know you're looking very uncomfortable, and maybe you want to jump in on this conversation. You can see it's becoming a point-counterpoint show between Mark and Mitch on both sides, on either side. I'm trying to be,
stay out,
have a conversation.
Yeah, I know. We always endeavor to, not cross that, whatever the third rail
We're over-serving, is that what you're saying?
But what's really interesting about all this that you guys are talking about, and it really made me think of it, because obviously there are a lot of issues with the environment. A lot of people are talking about now with AI, which we've talked about many times in previous episodes, about the sheer amount of load that it puts on the environment, on the electricity grid, right? And how expensive it is to run these massive server farms that process AI. Watching the show Landman on Amazon actually really had me think about a lot of the environment stuff, because they said a lot of things that even myself sometimes I don't really actively really stop to think about it. Things that we take for granted every single day that have plastics, that everything that basically that we use comes from oil. And so it's like, okay, now, so you want oil to get away. Okay, so then don't buy a cell phone, don't buy a car, don't buy anything with batteries, don't buy this and that. And it's like all the stuff that they said on the show. It's like, yeah, we forget about all this stuff that actually we still rely on. And obviously oil has its problems just like coal has, but I'm like, do we have a good solution right now that can replace all that stuff? No, we don't.
You got to fight one battle at a time, Alex. And the other part is you have to decide which mountain you're willing to die on. There's a lot of complicated issues going on there, and it'll only get more complicated because the world is shrinking in terms of how, if somebody sneezes in Beijing, we're going to say Gesundheit in Munich, Germany. It's just the nature of the beast. And my feeling is I'm getting older, and maybe I'm happy that I'll be checking off this mortal coil. in about 20 years, and some of these problems will lead to some kind of fruition that's going to hurt people. And I don't like the idea of that hurting my family, my friends, people like you guys. It's complicated. So anyhow, let's change the subject. This is really bringing me down. I'm sorry.
Okay, I have one more interesting case here.
Please.
The Federal Trade Commission has brought an antitrust suit against Meta for its purchase of Instagram and WhatsApp. Now, Meta purchased Instagram in 2012 and WhatsApp in 2014. So they've owned these for more than 10 years, and the Federal Trade Commission is now coming back after them for saying that they've created too much of a monopoly, I guess, by having these different companies all lined up as one. So that caught my eye. Seems to be a lot of antitrust cases going on in our industry.
It's been like that forever. It's been like that since the Great Depression, and a lot of times it's being done for the purposes of keeping something that was bad that happened in the past from repeating itself. A lot of that craziness that happened in the just before the Depression, when the few held most of the resources of the world, and they continue to have the power. That's part of the capitalist society that we just have to deal with it. I always felt that just a sprinkle of socialism always made things just a little bit better. But I know there are people on the other side that were screaming at me just for saying that. But that's where I'm coming from.
Well, it's interesting because they say that there's an email that says Mark Zuckerberg would rather than invest money in doing what they want to do, they're just going to go out and buy these companies. And so that's kind of what the case is hinging around. Now, obviously, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know all the intricacies, but it's interesting that if you're an entrepreneur and you are running a major company and you find that there's somebody else doing something you want to do better, you can't go out and buy them.
All right. Well, again, at the risk of bringing the show down, I don't want to, be a buzzkill for everybody. Here's the problem: is that if the government steps in and says you must do this, you got to break you up or change the way this is being done, then who is going to deal with the consequences of something? Let's go back to 2008 when the housing industry went bananas and the banks had to be bailed out. That was all driven by greed that caused that, and then us meaning the taxpayers, had to bail them out. What happens if we don't bail them out? Do we just let them fail? Isn't that the way of evolution, the way of life? So if you keep giving the people that might be evildoers in the way they conduct themselves in business the ability to do whatever the heck they want, knowing they're going to get bailed out in the end, they can't help themselves. That's just the way it's going to go. So, yeah, I was just told by Alex that we've lost some viewers over this subject. So let's leave it to the talk show guys to discuss these kind of consequences.
Sure.
I just have an opinion. I'm not an expert. So
but I have a question for Alex, because I know this
is it a good question? Is it a
near
positive
and dear
question?
to Alex's heart.
Okay. Good.
There's a report out there by Oxford Road and Edison Research that reveals that 72% of Americans consider that YouTube videos that have an audio-only version are still called podcasts. So, Alex, what do you think?
Say that again.
Anything on YouTube that has an audio-only version.
Yeah.
72% of Americans then think that that's a podcast rather than being, the actual definition, which you know much better than I do.
Let me just throw one little tiny bit to Alex before he answers. Also, part of that study indicates that video podcasts, or what we're doing right here, is gaining strength big time. So I just want to throw that little tidbit in there so you can answer.
Yeah, you're right. You know what? I've kind of given up on the whole podcasts are only RSS feeds, the traditional. And technically, yes, there's the technical correct definition, but I've kind of given up on it. So if somebody wants to call an audio only thing that they found on YouTube a podcast, I guess we got to go with that. Look, I mean, YouTube is pushing this. So now you can just punch in your, copy paste your RSS feed, and it will suck in whatever posts, and it'll basically upload them as audio files. So if YouTube wants to call that their podcast feature, yeah, okay. Traditionally we needed a podcast client that would fetch the RSS feed, but YouTube's pushing that, and everybody's going to start calling them podcasts. So I guess those are podcasts. So what am I going to do?
Ultimately, it's what the people want. Ultimately, I don't care if it's a government or anything else, or whether or not YouTube should do video or audio or video only. I think people are going to decide. They're going to decide with their mouse. The mouse is going to decide what they want to do, and they're going to make those decisions accordingly. So I think it's an interesting statistic, and I always felt that we had to do this show as a video podcast because there's so much conversation that's being done visually when you're talking. And again, I understand why we do audio too, because some people are, Ray Franklin's driving in his Tesla and he wants to listen to something. He can't watch and ride at the same time. So he's listening to the audio portion of this program. That's a good example for why we have audio only. But I don't think
you're visually impaired,
there's a divide.
Too. That's another. If you're visually impaired, there's a very good reason to have an audio version, because that's,
of course,
you're listening.
Of course, I didn't mean to leave that out. So Hershey and friends.
Oh, there's another story in here talking about Netflix, and Netflix Q1 revenue was $10.5 billion. Their earnings are projected to be between $43.5 billion and $44.5 billion for the year, and 55% of their new subscribers opted to take the lower plan, which includes advertising. So what does that say about radio and television and the move? Everything for a while was trending to be subscription and no ads, and it seems like now it's subscription with ads.
I think people are hurting for money. I think that you got to decide. Like, streaming services seem like a great idea, and all of a sudden I'm spending hundreds of dollars every month for all these streaming services, and I've got to. I'm not doing it because I like to. I'm doing it because I have to. So I'm just getting ready to dump Disney Plus, and then I realize, they got Doctor Who now, who I love, and I can't get rid of it because Doctor Who's on every Saturday, and they're going to have a new Andor season coming up. It's one half dozen things for another. A lot of things are vying for our attention, but it's not big. It's not big financial expenses. They just chip away at his time, one tiny little bit at a time. Yeah. Alex, how many different services are you on? I mean, you're very progressive. Do you find that you're spending way more money than you want to do all this?
Well, yeah. I mean, subscriptions, I'm definitely keeping an eye on. I've got a spreadsheet of all the different services that I'm on. So I have Disney Plus, Netflix, I have Amazon Prime. And yes, I pay that extra $2, $3 a month so I can have zero ads because I can't stand it. I have Paramount Plus, I have Apple TV Plus, and actually, in fact, I pay for the Apple One plan, which gets me Apple TV Plus and extra iCloud storage for up to 6 family members, including Apple Fitness and all the other Apple News Plus and all those other Plus services. What else do I have? I have YouTube Premium because, again, I can't stand ads. And if you give me the option to pay you to get rid of those ads, I will absolutely do that. So yes, subscriptions, they all add up over time, anywhere from $15 to $20 a month for each service, because I always get the premium one because I want the 4K plan with the Dolby Vision and HDR and all that sort of stuff. So yes, it adds up. I would like to pay less, but I won't because I don't want substandard service. And I'm fortunate enough that I have enough, that I can afford to pay for those premium services. But I understand 100% where, people might be willing to sacrifice having a few ads inserted if it means saving them $10 a month. And that's legitimate too. I just, it's not for me, but I can understand why people would want it.
Yeah, I go to the grocery store and I wanted to get a carton of freshly cut fruit, chopped up fruit. It was like a little fruit cocktail. $8. $8. Everything is going crazy. Cost of eggs, cost of food, cost of streaming media. And as Mark just snickered with me, saying that you're getting nickeled and dimed to death on all these things. And it's like, I feel bad.
I think how much more it costs today in terms of the services that you desire to have compared to our parents' generation, where you had a landline. That was it. TV came in over the airwaves. You didn't have a cell phone. So all of these different services the cost of living is going up through the roof.
Yeah. Well, how do you deal with that? I mean, that's an interesting, our parents say, well, we're better because we didn't have the internet. And when we got done with dinner, we ran outside and our parents didn't hover over us and we could run away and go blocks away and do all kinds of tomfoolery and we wouldn't be, and we came out okay. We ate asbestos for breakfast. It was fine for us. By the way, don't do that. And it was fine for us. You got to put disclaimers in. This is lawyers watching, Alex. Alex is getting a kick out of all my disclaimers that I put. Don't do everything I say, please. So it's a whole different world. And the question is, maybe we just, us old guys, maybe we just need to move on and make way for the younger people to come in and do it their own way, because that's the way they think about it. You kind of screwed things up to this point. Now it's our turn to screw things up for our kids and our descendants. And we're going to do it our way. And, thanks for the advice, but no thanks. So what else? Can we end this on a positive note somehow, somewhere? Can we move this into a happy place? What's some good news out there?
Okay, so I will just say before we move on, just to kind of put a bow on this, about what is happening right now with streaming services. I think a lot of people, there are a lot of economists and, that will try to predict what is going to happen. But ultimately, I don't think we really have a concrete answer, because we just kind of have to wait and see how all this stuff is going to play out. So with all these streaming services, I think they're all going through growing pains. I'm pretty certain Netflix is one of the few that is now making a profit. But they're all struggling. They're all having to fight churn, which is the biggest issue. Because here's the thing, and I follow a lot of actors on social media, and they complain about this all the time. It's like, especially I was actually just reading a post by Bruce Campbell. I mean, I loved Ash versus Evil Dead. I thought it was a fantastic series. They canceled it. Starz canceled it after 3 seasons for whatever reason, business reasons, obviously. Now, one of the biggest complaints he had was, and he's very sarcastic. He said, yeah, it seemed like a great idea to just put all the episodes up, put them all up at once so people can just sign up, watch them all, and cancel after 30 days. Yeah, that seemed like a great idea. And so as much as consumers hate that because they want to binge all that stuff and they hate having to wait a week for every new episode, there's a reason why they've gone back to this old TV method of distribution of doling it out over time, because they want to keep those people. They don't want people to cancel at the end of the month. And I completely understand that. It's not sustainable. Look, these shows are expensive to make. We have demanded, the industry at large has demanded, the quality bar keeps going up. So the spend keeps going up. And so the streaming costs have gone up too. They pass those costs on to us. We have to keep paying for it. And these shows are really, really hard to sustain. I mean, when you have a TV show that is spending $600 million for an entire series. Now, remember, 20 years ago.
You're talking about Andor now?
I'm talking about Andor specifically. Yeah. We were talking about it on Office Hours. When The Phantom Menace, when it came out 25 years ago, when their budget was $110 million or whatever it was, and Andor, a TV show, is spending $600 million. Now, obviously, the quality of the show is unbelievable, but how sustainable is that? So I think we're going to see a lot of streaming services fold. People are going to buy, companies are going to continue to buy other companies. They're going to merge. They're going to get swallowed up. Look, to bring it back to radio. It's already happening. It's happening now. I mean, we're seeing that now in radio, and that's happened in the past. So you're going to see more and more of that consolidation happen in media.
By the way, take a step back. Bruce Campbell, I love him. He used to have a TV series called Briscoe County Jr. It was a Western with a tongue-in-cheek attitude that only he could bring to it. And they were threatening to cancel. This would be like 1993. And I started making a lot of noise on my radio show in the morning about how much I enjoyed him. And I got a phone call from him on my show live. Apparently he was in Philadelphia doing something. And we talked for about 20 minutes about the way the industry, that I found him to be very refreshing. He didn't strike me as being a typical Hollywood star. He was a real down-to-earth guy, just very, very funny. Loved his, what was it, Evil, right? Or what were the movie series?
Oh, yeah. So, Evil, there was Evil Dead, and then
Evil Dead, all those. When he had the chainsaw for
Army of Darkness. They made 3 movies, and I can't remember the name of the second one. It was just Evil Dead.
He keeps showing
2,
up doing cameos in movies all the time. But I just like the guy. And it's like, don't forget, you have a lot of power, and sometimes you don't even realize it, that you're influencing people. And even though we got this little tiny The Last Angry DJ podcast, we might be influencing some people that have a decision in about the way these things get done. To your point about Netflix, I think Netflix is becoming an industry in itself. I don't think it's a competing streaming service. They were kind of the first to do what they're doing. And it wasn't so long ago that I used to receive these little red envelopes in the mail with a CD or DVD in it from Netflix. And that was their whole business model. They'd send you whatever movie you want, as long as it wasn't more than, 2 or 3 movies at a time. You could look at them at your leisure, send them back, and then you could redeem it for another movie. That was their whole business model. And I congratulate them for changing it and moving with the industry to the type of work that they're in for now. Yeah, I think the streaming industry is super, super popular. I think podcasting as a group is super popular. And I think that they're all headed in for a come to Jesus moment. Not that I'm using a wrong term on Easter Monday. There's going to be something that's going to happen that's going to rebalance, or there's going to be a correction, as they say in the industry of, what are we talking about? The stock market. There's going to be a correction of some kind. People are going to.
I think ultimately, I think Alice brought up some good points, and I think ultimately you're going to have multiple tiers for each one of these companies that you want to partake in with what they have. So you'll have the tier that says, "Hey, I don't want any commercials, so I'll pay more than somebody else who doesn't mind the commercials because they have a tighter budget for listening to all of these things and watching all of these things, or they just may want to have multiple ones." And so they're willing to put up with the commercials, so they're going to pay less. And I think if you're part of the C-suite of any one of these companies and somebody comes to you and says, look, we can have more revenue if we also offer multiple tiers, you're going to have to go with that particular way to distribute, because it's going to bring the shareholders more revenue.
Yeah. Let's face it, everybody has the ability to try to make money for their particular business model. And there's only room for so many at the top, and everybody else has to feed off the whatever's left over. It's like the feudal system. That should be another way of doing business out there. It's the feudal system. There's the few out there that's going to survive the purge or merge or whatever you want to call it. There's I think Paramount's merged with somebody, and it's Paramount, CBS, et cetera, et cetera. I just saw a deal now where you can subscribe to Disney Plus and Hulu and Max, all for the same price of like $16 a month. I think that's the way of the future. I think they're going to have to find that they're going to have to make deals and get together and be what they are. So sorry to have lurched into a political commentary. I think we felt it in our listenership and viewership here the moment that happened. Thank you for your patience. We're going to make up for it big time next week, when our special guest will be Alex Lindsay from MacBreak Weekly and OfficeHours.global. It's going to be a very interesting show. Alex has a radio career way back in the dim recesses of Pittsburgh lore. And we'll start out with that, but we'll do some comparisons of how things used to be then and how he's carried what he learned in the broadcasting and music industry forward into his current career. We certainly will have some questions. And if you have questions, Alex, what do they do?
Yeah, Mitch, there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. You can become you can become a part of our community, our Discord community. I'm going to leave our QR code up on the screen. A lot of you are already in there, but if you just scan that QR code, boop, right there over my left shoulder, that will let you into our Discord community, and that is a great place to continue the conversation after the show, during the show. And we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. You can suggest guests or whatever you want there. You can also subscribe to the podcast. We would sincerely appreciate it. This show is available both in audio and video format. We're on YouTube live streaming typically every Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Today's a bit of a special show because of the Easter weekend. And also, there are other ways you can contribute. You can like and share with a friend, of course. You can also donate by going to patreon.com/TheLastAngryDJ. That's patreon.com/TheLastAngryDJ, and become a coffee supporter at $2 a month. We would also appreciate that as well. You can find us on social media. Just look it up. You know the name of the show as well. And that is pretty much it.
You know what I'd like to add to the show? A trivia question of the week, and then we can bring our friends in from Arby's to give us some gift certificates for like a beef and cheddar sandwich or something fun to reward you for your knowledge of some kind of tech device that's no longer being made. We could go look at Mark's shelf there and see some radio history germinating back there, or dilapidating, whatever the term may be. So think about that. And again, the only way we'll know if you like what we're doing is to send us a note. And I apologize in advance for my political leanings. I think I took that too far in the non-interesting area. There's plenty of place you can go if you want to get that kind of content. So we'll keep a little more towards where we are. And Mark, what are you doing exciting on WGMD this week that we can mention on the show?
So this week we have Your News Talk America on Friday, where we take in questions through the internet from everybody that's listening and watching. And you can vote on those questions, and you can chat with everybody else. And, you can go to realnewstalk.com to find out more about that.
All right, good. If you want your political commentary, that's the place to go. You can go to your app and check it out and see what's going on. Or if you happen to be in Rehoboth or Lewis, Delaware, the beaches are warming up, so that'd be a nice place to go. And the other thing, lest we forget, it takes a whole community to make the show possible. Alex has some people he'd like to give notice to that make this program happen. Alex, you've done some new investments in your setup there that's interesting. So tell us about what's going on.
Yeah, so this show is, first of all, I just want to thank the people at Boink Software, Oliver Breidenbach, who has been instrumental in helping us produce this show, because without Memo Live, we wouldn't be able to do it. This week, we made a pretty significant change. Obviously, I had some issues there at the beginning with my mic being double up in the audio. But basically what we're doing, for those that are interested in audio processing and all that kind of thing, what we're doing is we're basically using Dante to send ISO audio channels of each person that is in the show out of Memo Live, and it's going into a digital console, which is my Yamaha DM3. And that way I can actually mix all of the individual people there. I can add dynamics processing and whatever else I want to do there, and then basically bring the overall levels up and then send that back over Dante into Memo Live. So it's pretty complicated. A lot of patching involved there. And that's how you're hearing us now. So it's going into the Yamaha console back in. So thanks to Boink Software.
Yeah, I noticed the sync is right on the money now, so that's good. And you know what? If you're a regular viewer, we care about your comments, and it might even be a technical thing that sometimes we don't know that there's a problem until you let us know. And Alex is really quick on his feet. It's great that he is dealing with all the technical mumbo-jumbo that makes this program work, and still be a participant and co-host of the program and produce it all at the same time. Alex, either that's a great talent to have, or it'll curse you to your end of your days.
I still make some mistake. I don't even think I was on screen while I was talking there, so I don't think I cut to myself, and I'm not on screen now. So
Okay. Well, it's always nice to hear you in my ear. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I hear you say, Mitch, your mic is muted, and I wake up in a cold sweat. So what are you going to do? So don't forget, next week, an interesting show. Actually, it's this week, since we're on a special time on Monday. It's this Sunday. We'll have a special event with Alex Lindsay, who's from MacBreak Weekly. You can see him in office hours, got .global every single day. And also has a lot of stuff going on in the business of AV. He knows his A's, he knows his V's, and he's also an old radio guy. So we'll talk a little bit about that. If you have any questions you want to put in there, Alex just gave you the rundown. You can go into all the various aspects of our program, Discord, Mukana, at least the day of or day before the show, and the rest of it is just fun and games here. So thank you so much for being here. In the meantime, stay safe.
Swagger down the street with your red lips and funky beat. You better hold your head up to the sky. I'm gonna roll with you till the day I die.